Welcome to Digital Currents, brought to you by Morgan Creek Digital. I'm Xavier Segura. Each episode, we spotlight the topics and people changing the tech industry with a focus on AI, blockchain, chips, and big data. Thanks for listening, and please make sure to subscribe if you like what you hear. And remember, stay current.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural Digital Currents of 2025. And you'll notice something different. I am solo today. My beloved partner is down with the stomach bug that is ravaging everyone this holiday season. So we're going to try this. I don't know if this is actually going to work or not. I'm not even sure technically it's going to work, but I'm just going to talk to y'all for a while and see how it goes. So we'll start with the stock review. Now, today, happy Sweet 16 Bitcoin. Today is the Genesis block day for the 16th time. Bitcoin turns 16 here on January 3rd. And so, we're wearing the Bitcoin orange pants, and there is only one choice to have the Genesis block socks. Chances are on the brink of the second bailout for banks, which was the original message in the Bitcoin blockchain. And, here we are now, a $2 trillion asset from 16 years ago, despite everyone saying that it's not worth anything and has no functionality or value. We think it does. I also got a little bit of, GM for everybody from Morgan Creek, and we have the Bitcoin on the other side. So we'll make it a Bitcoin show today. You got the buy Bitcoin over there. So we're all good. Now, what's amazing about Bitcoin is 1 year ago, right? Which is not that long ago, but 1 year ago, the price was $42,000. Let's get the exact number, $42,786. And today we're about 96,500-ish, having reached the six-digit level over 107,000 the end of last year. And, now I had to graduate from the 100 a day to 100K, 100 push-ups a day to 150 a day till 150K. So that's a lot of push-ups. But been doing those religiously. And why is all of this Bitcoin mania, you might call it? We had the 100K party down in Miami a couple of days ago on New Year's Eve. Michael Saylor hosted at his house. I unfortunately couldn't go. I was traveling that day back from a family vacation, but would have been fun to be there. The whole Metaplanet team was there. By the way, Metaplanet, little company that I am on the board of, trying to be the micro strategy of Asia, was not only the best performing stock in Japan, which is kind of cool. Now, part of that is the law of small numbers. It was playing catch up to MicroStrategy and a bunch of others who have put a lot more Bitcoin on their balance sheet. But Simon and the team, Dylan, have done just an amazing job building that business. And we are well on our way now. We've gotten past that level for issuing debt that you need to have in the Japanese market. So excited about what's going on at Metaplanet, excited about what's going on in the Bitcoin market. I won't spend the whole hour. I don't even, we'll probably won't go an hour. I'm not sure I can talk by myself for an hour. But a couple other things to mention. I'm wearing green on top. I got the orange on the bottom, the orange pants for Bitcoin Friday. And I love that Bitcoin Friday coincides with Bitcoin's birthday. But I do have the green on top, honoring my beloved Irish for their dominating performance last night in the Sugar Bowl. And thoughts and prayers to the families of those impacted by just the horrific events of the day before when the Sugar Bowl was supposed to be played. Just crazy what's happening in the world these days. But, life must motor on. And so we'll send our best wishes to them. But I'm wearing the green on top to honor how feisty the Irish were last night and just beating down Georgia. Nobody gave them a chance. I think Georgia was even a favorite. Despite Notre Dame having a better record and a higher seed. But, respect has to be earned. and it has been 35 long years. I'm sorry, 37 long years. I mean, I could do math since 1988 when we actually had a really, really dominant team, and people are still, fresh off the problems we had going to the Orange Bowl against Alabama back in 2012. I do have a little PTSD, although I am going to head to Miami next week and try to get over that PTSD against Penn State. We'll see how that all plays out. But back to Bitcoin and back to digital asset markets. Cliff Asness, who is a good buddy, actually, I've known him for a very, very long time, and we kind of grew up in the business together, and he's gone to up much bigger things than I. But I love Cliff, and he is a super mega brain. Wrote a nice piece yesterday on an allocator looking back over the next 10 years, or looking back over, I guess, the next 10 years, and saying, oh, by the way, U.S. stocks didn't do as well as everybody thought they were going to do. Today, people have the highest weighting to U.S. stocks in history. The concentration of the stock market is the highest in history. The valuation of the stock market is the highest in history. So that mathematically says that it's probably not going to be a very good decade for U.S. equity returns. Kind of like back in 2000 when I showed my board a forecast by Jeremy Grantham from GMO that said the U.S. stock market would have a negative return over the next 10 years. And my chairman said, you're not allowed to use the letters G, M, or O in a sentence ever again. He's always wrong. That could never happen. He was right. It did happen. And it'll probably happen again. But what Cliff was saying is not just that U.S. stocks will perform poorly, but he's saying that, surprisingly, despite the fact that no one has any exposure to international stocks will likely outperform. Again, it's just math, and he's a quant. He talked about a bunch of other things like trend following, which, everybody has abandoned for dead, which probably for good reason, since the quants and the fast traders have really taken over the traditional market. So I'm not sure quant strategies, trend following strategies will come back, except in areas like Bitcoin. Trend following in Bitcoin really works because Bitcoin is still dominated by humans, as are many other crypto markets. But one thing I quibble with Cliff on, obviously, is he thinks that Bitcoin will or crypto broadly will rally. And he said, maybe 250K for Bitcoin, but then will crash all the way back to 10,000. I just think that's wrong, and love to get the chance to talk to Cliff about it. Probably will make the trip to Connecticut to do that. But the idea that he did make a funny point that the allocation was 90% to Bitcoin, which was a good thing, and 10% to Fartcoin, which that's a little silly to have a $1.4 billion market cap for a joke. But there are a lot of joke coins, meme coins out there that this whole idea of monetizing attention, maybe that's something. I'm not really 100% sure, but Dogecoin could turn into something if Elon gets his way and gets some development activity and maybe gets that integrated in government. But, Brad Garlinghouse is trying harder to get XRP and Ripple engaged there. He's, very friendly with the BIS and all the government types. So he's trying really hard. And then you got Hedera, which has also made a bunch of contributions politically and trying to get involved there. And then you got Charles Hoskinson and Cardano. Cardano's kind of fallen off. I said this before. I've been doing this now 6 years full-time as a venture capitalist in the digital asset space. Met developers across most of the major blockchains, obviously across Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana. Never met a developer on Cardano. Never met a developer on XRP. So I don't really, and come to think of it, haven't really met anybody in Hedera either. But we'll see how that all plays out. The one thing is, when you have a president who will, come to inauguration here in a few weeks, who has said that not only are they going to try to make Bitcoin a strategic reserve, which, pretty sure will happen and I think will be a big deal, but has also said they're going to buy a bunch of assets through this holdco that his son is running. And they have bought things like Chainlink and Hedera and XRP and Cardano. And he has threatened to make those U.S.-based assets tax-free for capital gains. That could drive some activity, at least in the short run. So we'll see how that all plays out. But back to Bitcoin for a second. Bitcoin is in the fourth year of the four-year cycle as we speak. We are in crypto fall. Now, what comes after fall? Crypto winter. So yes, crypto winter will happen again. I don't think the four-year cycle has been repealed. I think humans are going to human. I think we will take this level of price beyond fair value, and we'll get to a level where we need another correction. We made new highs in hash rate. We have lots of good developments going on in terms of Bitcoin usage and adoption, new wallets. You got people like Metaplanet and others bringing Bitcoin on their treasury. We now have 140 companies that have Bitcoin on the treasury. There are 20, I think, companies that have more than 1,000 Bitcoin on their treasury. We're kind of psyched that, Morgan Creek, little old Morgan Creek, is one of the top institutional holders in Bitcoin globally now across all of our funds. We have, no, we're not as big as the big dogs like A16Z and Paradigm, but, for a group that was a traditional asset manager that made the switch, we feel pretty good about where we are today. I think that's going to continue. I think more companies and actually more governments will put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. That will be a stable source of demand. Supply, we're in the post-halving period. That 1 year following the halving is usually pretty good. And then you got the issue with leverage. How many of the degenerate gamblers and speculators come in and really push the price up with leverage? Now, Michael Saylor through MicroStrategy is issuing debt to buy Bitcoin, and that is a form of leverage. But I'm talking about big leverage, not like, 0.2, 0.3, 1.2, 1.3 times leverage. I'm talking about big leverage, like 5, 8, 10, 20, 50 times leverage, which goes on in some of these crazy dexes around the world. So if that happens, then we'll probably see a speculative blow off well above the 150 level. I've been talking about the 150 level as kind of the target for this cycle. We should be, I think, 50% above what I think fair value will end up by mid-year this year at 100K. And so that seems logical because I feel like there'll be less leverage in a post-FTX world, but maybe not. All that said, should be a fun 6 months for Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin winter will come back. I don't believe we're in an up only forever. I think there'll be volatility. And remember, volatility is simply disagreement over the future outcome of anything. Amazon still to this day, 27 years in, almost 28 years in to being a public company, still has double-digit volatility every single year, average 31%. So on average, you lose about a third of your value every year, and twice more than 80 plus percent. So once over 90 plus percent. So when is the right time to sell? Never, right? But most people can't handle that volatility. Think about volatility, it's your friend. It's not your enemy. You want to own assets that have high volatility. That means high potential for return because there is that disagreement over the future. Now you have to get it right. You have to pick the ones that are good. But high volatility assets are good as long as they're uncorrelated with one another. And that's how you build a portfolio like Cliff Asness's memo talks about with all the different asset classes across an allocator portfolio. So let's talk about the other parts of the ABCDs. This is the ABCD Roundup, by the way. So, with the A, 2024 was clearly the year of AI. As great as it was for Bitcoin, up 140% and the number one asset class again. So now 13 out of 15 years, it has been the best performing asset class, which is pretty awesome. But it paled in comparison to what happened in the AI space. I mean, there were AI companies that went up, multiples of 140% on kind of hope. So yes, there has been developments, and LLMs are really good tools. I mean, they're getting better. They're still not perfect, and they still hallucinate, and they still put up bad information, but they are useful, and they're useful in a lot of different ways in terms of fostering creativity and helping. If you're good at prompting and asking good questions, it can give you good feedback and help you organize. So there are reasonable tools for it, but it's not like this be all end all. And the valuation, excuse me, for companies like OpenAI, I just think are silly. At 150 billion with, not enough revenue to justify that. But the things that came out of OpenAI, I think like SSI that, had a $4 billion valuation with nothing, like 3 guys in a PowerPoint. I think that got ahead of itself, or Hugging Face. So I think that will settle down, and there'll be some other developments in AI. But the thing you have to remember about AI is just one piece of the ABCDs. And remember, the ABCDs is based on data. Data is the king. There's so much data is being created. We're creating it right now. About 300 terabytes a day. Not terabyte. It's even bigger than that. I'm using the wrong. No, I think it's terabyte. So, but it's an amazing thing that when you have that data, what do you have to do with it? Well, you have to capture it and organize it. And that's really what blockchains do, the B part. Then you have to process it and make analytics with it. And that's what computing platforms or chips do. And we'll get to chips here in a second. Super exciting stuff going on in the chip space. But then AI is just basically a tool to make decisions with data. And it's not new. It's a 75-year-old overnight success story that everybody thinks was invented last year. But 1980 was the year of AI by Time Magazine, and 2000 was when Intel was going to change the world with their chip and AI, and now they're an afterthought. And the 8086 is not even really a thing anymore. Although I learned the other day that they ran a huge part of the space program at NASA with the 8088 processor for up until a few years ago, which is pretty impressive. It wasn't a very sophisticated chip, but they have a lot of tech debt around it and made it work. So if we think about AI broadly, the applications of AI, particularly agentic AI, are big. And I think that's going to be the watchword for 2025 is agents. And, we've seen the television commercials during the football games that, we're going to have these agents that do all this stuff for us. And, you had Matthew McConaughey sitting in the rain, and, he was pissed off that his, phone didn't notice that it was raining and change his reservation to inside, which the guys across the street did do. Yeah, that's definitely coming. And those use cases are real. I have the new AI assistant on my iPhone. Horrible. I mean, maybe I'm just using it wrong, but I haven't found any good use cases for it. And it doesn't seem to respond the way I need it to. And it certainly, doesn't it listens to me. I know it listens to me because it feeds me ads based on what I talk about. But, last night when I said, hey, I think I want to go to Miami, it didn't rush out and get me a cheap ticket to Miami, which it certainly theoretically should be able to do, or find me a hotel room. I still had to go through and type the buttons in Travelocity or whatever to do that. But there will come a day when we'll have this series of agents around us kind of, making our lives easier. And that's what progress is, right? Progress is where you spend less time on survival and more time open to creativity and productivity and making enhancements. That's why I think things will get better. We'll create more jobs, not less jobs. And yes, jobs will go away, but there'll be the jobs like, those the people that answer that help you that, sometimes don't help. We'll have AI agents that will help you better. But then those people lose their jobs. Well, yes, and then they'll be retrained, probably using agentic AIs in education, which will be a huge boon, and will increase the productive capacity because the most powerful force in the world is human creativity. So AI will continue to be a story, but I think this year it's about agentic AI, not just AI for AI's sake. And hopefully someday C3 AI, which I don't think really does anything, even though ticker is AI and everybody just buys it because it has a good ticker. It's not open AI, by the way. Maybe that stock will actually finally go down. On the chip side, this is big. So, we have a number of companies in the portfolio that are around chips and computing platforms and just been having a blast at talking to these companies, investing in these companies. The innovation in the chip space as we get to the, really level of physical progress at nanometer scale. We start talking about going from 3 nanometers to 2 nanometers. Well, pretty soon you're just too small for electrons to move. And we had to have other innovations, whether it be photonics or whether it be different substrates other than silicon. And so we're seeing a lot of development there in both material science, photonics, really exciting stuff. In addition, we're seeing new constructs like, FHE, fully homomorphic encryption. Encryption is one thing. And when encryption on your phone, right, what's on your phone is encrypted, or what's on your computer is encrypted. And if you send a message and Signal or Telegram, it's encrypted. But the problem is the data you put up in the cloud is encrypted as long as it's at rest. But once you try to use it, then it's no longer encrypted, and that's where the data hacks happen. So actually, my wife and I had to deal with this over the weekend or over the holiday, not the weekend, since it's only Friday, where there was a data leak, and they got a debit card, and they hacked the PIN number using probably a random number generator, and someone in Jakarta started charging a bunch of stuff, and $2,300 on the debit card. We call the bank, and they're like, well, we can't do anything until they actually go through because they're pending right now. I'm like, well, if they're pending, then couldn't you stop them and not honor the transactions? They said, nope, we have to let them go through, and then we'll take care of it for you. Like, but then you'll lose the money. So anyway, but that's what they told us. But this was an example of data that was being worked on by somebody, obviously our bank, since the only one would really have our debit card number, and they got hacked. And that data gets leaked, and now I had to get a new debit card and a new PIN number, and also it's an inconvenience. But somebody's going to lose $2,300, and someone in Jakarta got a bunch of $50 transactions processed to buy some stuff. So that happens every day, all day. Well, fully homomorphic encryption potentially solves a bunch of that because it allows data when it's not at rest to stay encrypted. Now, it actually makes my head hurt when I think about this, but it's just a matter of quick processing and processing data in a new way and imagining the unimaginable, which is really what innovation is all about. The fact that it happens to be another Domer friend of mine, a classmate of mine from class of 85, greatest class ever at Notre Dame, he says humbly, and it's just a joke between us, us members of class of 85. But Kevin and I, we were, bookends of Allison Yurko in the 1985 yearbook for Notre Dame, but hadn't seen each other in 40 years. But last year, 39 years, he called me last year. It's our 40th anniversary this year. Last year, he called me and said, hey, we've started this company. I hear you guys do some venture capital around chips. Are you interested in finding out what we do? I'm like, absolutely. We had one company already that had exposure to FHE. So I'm pretty excited about it. And the more I learned about Kevin, he worked at TI and Avago and knew a lot about chips. And I had this guy, Dave Archer, who is one of the smartest guys I've ever met around computing, everything from quantum to traditional to FHE. When the cloud has the potential to be encrypted instead of unencrypted, every server in the world will have to change chips. It's just that simple, right? If you have the choice between being in a cloud that's unencrypted versus encrypted, as a business, you would choose encrypted 10 times that, unless it's prohibitively expensive, which it doesn't appear that it will be. So that's pretty exciting stuff. So Other chip-related things, photonics. We made an investment in a photonics company. We made another investment in another competitor that has a different way of thinking about FHE. We've got some developments at chain reaction along FHE. So FHE is clearly a theme. We made a couple other investments in a chip that goes away from digital back to analog, saying that, if you're at the edge for computing, not everything needs to be digital and go through a digital processor. It can just be an analog, like on or off. Is someone at the traffic light? If someone's at the traffic light, then turn on and observe. You don't need to observe when there's nobody at the traffic light, particularly overnight. So you can save a lot of power, a lot of energy. So analog devices is a kind of back to the future opportunity to take old technology and find new use cases. Got some acceleration technology around chips and processing. And you think about CPUs, they were great until GPUs came along, and now GPUs are displacing CPUs. But now TPUs and LPUs and VPUs and everything else will start to displace, because it's just about speed and processing. So all that's super exciting. On the blockchain, clearly we've talked a lot about Bitcoin, Ethereum. There are a lot of people that say Ethereum's been kind of left in the dust, and Solana had a really great recovery year despite all the FTX problems and the pumping and dumping and the failing transactions, and they've continued to make progress. Now, since a lot of it was meme coins, maybe that's not as much progress as they should have. Avalanche made some progress. They've got some things in gaming that are happening. We still need good games to come to Web3. You can't just make a game and just because you can own stuff, have people play it. It has to be a good game, right? I mean, it has to be a Monster Hunter, 20 years of a franchise, and people are as excited about this new release of Monster Hunter Wilds as I've ever seen gamers. I mean, crazy. Like, people saying they're going to take a month off of work to play this game. And I played the beta last month, and it was pretty special. I mean, the amount of realism in the video and the number of things that you can do, it's pretty amazing. So and then you got people like Elon showing how he does Diablo and just speed running and making gaming a thing again, and people talking about how it makes you better at decision making and inference, and so lots of intersections there. But Ethereum, people say it was left for dead, in that I asked the question last year, if Ethereum hadn't been invented until now with Solana and other things that are better, faster, cheaper, would anybody use it? It's an interesting question, because one of the arguments about Ethereum is it was first and it got critical mass. Even though it's inferior technology, it has so much critical mass and so much developer activity that it's better. And that probably is still true. And there are people who say it's going to go to 10,000. Well, they said it was going to go to 10,000 last year and it didn't. I'm not sure it's going to go to 10,000 this year, but it could, maybe. But I'm probably not in that camp. So the ETH heads, they'll continue to worship at Vitalik. But I just don't really see it. I think better, faster, cheaper. SWI is a great example of better, faster, cheaper, really having a great year last year. And then you've got this question of, is there actually going to be use cases for these other more centralized, I guess, things like XRP and Hedera? I don't know. We'll find out. So I think it is going to be a very interesting year for blockchains. Blockchain adoption is going to continue to accelerate. Blockchain use cases are going to continue to accelerate. The cross use cases where Chainlink thinks they're number one. I still struggle with this whole a bunch of L1s with bridges. It's probably not going to be where we end up. Do we go all the way to the other side of one chain to rule all chains and it's just Bitcoin? Just this baby. I don't know, maybe, but I do think there's a lot of a lot of potential there that since blockchain is proof of work, I think that's the superior way to be decentralized. I think it is got the greatest critical mass in terms of number of users and wallets and so we'll see. But I think there's a lot of things happening in blockchain. I think DeFi on Bitcoin is coming rapidly. What does that mean for DeFi on ETH and other things? I don't know. I think DeFi is the future. I think it's the future of finance. There are companies, like our portfolio company Arch that does lending against your Bitcoin. There are some that say, well, we should do that on directly on a decentralized DEX. Yeah, I think there are some options for that. I like the client service element of Arch and the fact that they focus on over collateralized Bitcoin based loans and do it with just kind of white glove kind of service, kind of the way Zappo was the original custodian, like the Swiss bank for big Bitcoin owners early on, then got bought by Coinbase and became the institutional version. So I think there's a role for that, and I like the Arch team. We're investors. So lots of good things happening there, but I do think it's the year for DeFi. I didn't mean this to turn into a prediction show, but maybe that's what this should be is, what do we see for 2025? I think, maybe X and I will come back and do that next week when he's feeling better. So we've kind of run through the ABCDs. We run through football, although I will say one thing about the football championship. I love having 12 teams. I think you need to make it 16 because all 4 bye teams lost, which means maybe there's something to this theory that, you're rusty versus having played the week before and you're still kind of tight and ready. Or maybe they just got the seedings wrong because they had this silly thing that if you're a conference champion, you had to be a high seed. Maybe that was on. But I think going to 16 would make it better because then everybody's playing each week. So what's left to talk about? Well, we could talk about what's going to happen in the traditional markets, the TradFi markets. I do think it's going to be a volatile year. I think there are a couple things that you need to be cautious of and at least aware of. What's happening in China with their 10-year yields collapsing, the deflationary pressures that are happening. And some would argue that they're going to have their equivalent of the Great Depression or the Japanese retrenchment in '89. They had this debt-fueled boom, and now they're going to have a debt-fueled bust. Certainly possible. I do think they being the PBOC and the leadership have an advantage over Japan and the U.S. in that, they're less democratic, shall we say, and they can do command and control better. So they can just decree that they're going to print a bunch of money and bail the banks out and not allow the type of deflationary death spiral that took over the U.S. for 40 years and Japan for another 40 years. So we'll see how that goes. But that has implications. If they don't turn on the liquidity spigot, then valuations around the world are pretty high. It could start an unwinding. The problem with an unwinding is you got levered positions in the traditional world, and we have the highest level of leveraged positions in the stock market relative to unlevered positions we ever had. And then you got a lot of people on margin, and you got all kinds of leverage embedded in the system. In a scenario where that unwinds, the assets that we think are great, cash, gold, Bitcoin, stores of value, will also get whacked in the short run. And that is something we need to be careful of, because if the Fed doesn't continue to cut, like if they have to reverse course because inflation's running out of control or growth is higher than we think or the dollar gets too strong, and they have to change course, and China doesn't follow through with big liquidity and global liquidity starts to ebb, and then people start to retrench, that unwinding scenario could accelerate the end of the crypto fall. The other thing we have to watch out for is last year was so great. There's going to be a downturn around Chinese New Year for sure. Because, Chinese New Year, you have everybody has to fill up the red envelopes with cash, and they do that by taking their winners out of whatever won. And it wasn't Chinese stocks. So it's going to be crypto. And the one that I'm even more worried about is tax day in the U.S. April could be an ugly period for Bitcoin, in that people made a lot of money and they're going to have to pay tax. And yes, the IRS pushed this rule change a year, but that doesn't mean you don't have to pay your taxes. It just means there's not a reporting requirement for the underlying brokers. But bottom line is there's a lot of tax that has to be paid on big gains across a lot of things. And that should lead to some seasonal weakness. Other things to kind of keep an eye on, private investing, venture capital funding has fallen off a cliff. It's probably a good thing. Most of these big giant funds that get raised that claim to be venture capitalists are really growth equity, and that's a perfectly fine thing. It's just not venture capital. I like the fact there's less money chasing some great deals. And it's because you have great talent, huge talent, that's gotten laid off by big tech. You have too little money chasing more deals, which is a prerequisite. And then you have a technology wave. 2024 was the beginning of the blockchain era, or the truth net, as I call it. And in great years, you get 2 out of the 3. You get talent, you get a dearth of capital, and you get tech. You get 2 out of those 3. It's like good, fast, and cheap. Pick 2 when you're building a house. Normally, you don't get all 3. You did get all 3 in 1996 around the internet. Let's see, real estate, CMBS delinquencies, pretty bad. Keep an eye on that. The extended pretend people will be out in force. So I don't expect a disaster there, but I do think real estate is not going to be as great a store of value. And I think there's a shift happening, right? My generation, we all bought houses, and that was our store of value. And the younger generation, they can't afford a house. Not everybody. I mean, some people can afford it, but the average person can't afford a house because housing prices gone up and incomes didn't go up as much. And the gap is the highest we've ever seen. And so their store of value is digital. And that is an interesting shift. And then you got all the boomers that are going to start expiring, and all that capital, the 39 trillion, is going to transfer to the younger generation. They're not going to invest it the same way. So that digital divide, I think, will be another tailwind to digital assets and away from traditional stores of value like gold and silver and real estate. Art, be really good. Digital art, Danny Wong has a great point on digital art, particularly digital art on Bitcoin, on-chain monkeys, which I'm a member of. I think is going to be a great type, a store of value. One of ones. Scarce assets are real. Again, Cliff quibbled with that a little bit, that scarcity alone isn't enough. It kind of is, scarcity with demand. Like, you could have a very small pitcher of lemonade on a corner with no cars, and that lemonade doesn't have much value. Now, if you got a small pitcher of lemonade in, the middle of a hot city with a lot of people on the corner of 45th and Park, you're going to sell a lot of lemonade, or you're going to sell a little bit of lemonade at very high prices. So you do need the demand, but I think in a digital world where things can be made available to a wider audience. I remember when we invested in eBay back in 1996, and the board was like, "You're investing in a garage sale company? I don't get it." Like, well, I guess when you put it like that, yeah, it's a garage sale company, but it's a very big garage. So instead of the garage sale being in your house and you got to have cars drive by or advertise in the newspaper and people see it, now the whole world is your garage. So I do think that the reach of these technologies makes the upside significantly greater. So innovation, investing, the greatest wealth is created by investing in innovation. That requires you to invest in something you believe in before others even understand, and you'll be mocked and ridiculed for your non-consensus actions, but it's totally worth it. Yeah, innovation, embracing innovation early is hard, but it is the best way to profit. And who would have thunk it 15 years ago that this little company making graphics boards for video gamers would become the dominant computer supplier? I bought my son a little $249 Nano, the Jetson Nano, which is basically a Raspberry Pi on steroids, a GPU version, developer kit, $249. A lot of people are going to be playing with GPUs, and we're going to shift even faster away. Now, is NVIDIA still overvalued? Yeah. Is it going to crash? Not necessarily. Depends on liquidity situations and portfolio unwindings, but the technology is here and will continue to excel. Now, will that eventually get displaced by TPUs and VPUs and LPUs? I don't know. We'll see. If people can take them from the singular idea of just large language models to more processing and even encryption and the other things that we talked about. So maybe with that we'll stop and we'll say that we hope that everybody has a great 2025. X will be back next week, and we'll get this rolling the right way. And hope everybody has some fun watching the rest of the football playoffs, and remind everybody to stay current. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you for joining us this week on Digital Currents. Check out our links to our website and social media in the show's description box. Please make sure to subscribe if you like what you hear. And remember, stay current.
This podcast should not be construed as investment advice nor solicitation for the sale of any security, advisory, or other service. Investment themes and ideas discussed may be owned by funds managed by the host and podcast guests. Any conflicts at the time of production have been mentioned by the host but are subject to change. Listeners should consult their personal financial advisors before making any investment decisions.